Hey, I just kind of literally hit record, but I want to talk about something. And also, yeah, that's polar bears on my mug. What up? I made a post on TikTok the other day, and also Instagram technically, where I kind of started off a new series called "Hey, Real Quick." The idea just being that I'll talk about like one topic, just do the one topic. And the topic that I was talking about was the changes to Reddit, the API changes that they're putting out, and basically killing third-party apps by jacking up the prices for their API, very similar to what Twitter did. One thing that I've noticed though is that I don't think people really understand one, the severity as to what this really is, like how egregious of a price jack up this is, and what it really means. And like no, hey, like not, you don't need to know what an API is. You shouldn't have to know what an API is. But I up until very recently was a professional developer. Like I worked on APIs and I worked using APIs and I worked specifically in the consumer technology space in sort of like the big tech-ish area. So I want to make this like entertaining as best I can, and I'll keep it quick. But I want to put it into words, like a metaphor for just like how ridiculous this is and like what it really means. So let's say that Reddit is a community center. Let's imagine a town. And at the center of that town, there is a building that's just a rec center. And there may be other rec centers around town, but this one crops up. It seems pretty nice. And they attract people by saying like, hey, you know, we're a privately owned rec center, but anyone can use us. And we're free and open to use. Anyone can come in and take a room and start like setting up any kind of like activities they want to do. And for more than a decade, this rec center just becomes the place to go. Everyone heads there, they take their car, they bike there, they take a taxi or a bus. There's so many different ways to get to the community center. And once you're there, there's a whole bunch of different stuff to do. You make a bunch of friends, you meet a bunch of new people, you have a bunch of new interests that crop up because you just happened upon what other people were doing in this rec room. And as time goes on, it gets more and more just everyone goes to this rec center, and all the other rec centers start to close down because like what's even the point? Some rec centers remain, but they're largely derelict and don't have as many people. Everyone's just going to the big main rec center in the center of town. And it's literally free. Like it's literally free to do what you want to do there. And it's entirely volunteer run. They don't have staff in the rec center doing things to have fun with you. The staff just maintains the building, and everything that's like fun to do in the rec center is done by volunteers. So after spending like over a decade building up their reputation and getting everybody to be in their facility and setting up shop there and creating established communities, they suddenly say, by the way, you can no longer take any transportation to our rec center except for our issued buses, and that costs money. Either you have to directly pay, or you need to let us record you at all times and sell your information for access to the rec center. My metaphor is falling off the rails, but this theoretical bus has like cameras in it that are just recording everything you do and everything you say and everyone you talk to and everything you like, and then selling that to other people that you don't know, just so that you can go see the same people and do the same things at this rec center that you've been going to for over a decade. An API is an application programming interface. What it is a way for a platform to allow third parties to integrate with their service. On a very simple level, consider like a social media management tool, like some sort of application that lets you schedule posts ahead of time or something. And they use the API to post those posts when the time comes. That's how they integrate. And then on the more extensive side, you'll have entire third-party apps. A great example is Apollo, the iOS Reddit app that is an entire Reddit app using the Reddit API. It's an alternate way to use Reddit. Very notably, Reddit did not even have a mobile app for years after mobile apps for Reddit already existed because they were all community made. And there was no point in making one because all the community ones were really good. But then Reddit purchased one of those community apps and slowly started adding more ads and tracking and making it kind of worse. And more, they started to not really let on about those other third-party apps because they're just not profitable. Because the profit model is entirely based on collecting user information and selling it to the highest bidder. The profit model is not providing a decent service on the internet for people to use. That's not where their profit comes from. So now the rec center has issued rules about how it can be used. You have to use it the way that they prescribe it to be used. You have to wear their dress code when you go there. You have to speak the way that they speak when you go there. You have to stay within their new strict rule set. Otherwise, you can't do it anymore. And you have to pay them money or let them data mine you. All of those volunteers who have been setting up those communities and making fun spaces are kind of pissed because they did it in good faith because the rec center was trying to say, hey, this is the place to do it. And now just turned it on its head completely. Now it's a closed community center. Now it's a private center. Now you have to play by their rules. And yes, they're a private company. They can do this. There's nothing stopping them. It's perfectly allowed. And that's the problem. The problem isn't that they're doing it. The problem is that they can do it. There is no regulation that's really providing oversight for any of this. There's no regulation that says, hey, giant platform, you have a small country's worth of users. And because of that, we're going to require you to have open and free access to your data so that it can be accessible, so that it can be user-friendly, and so that it can be researched for public good. Instead, these massive platforms get to operate as essentially a global utility and then just charge whatever they want to charge for access to their platform. It is explicitly consumer hostile. Yes, they can do it. And the only reason that they're going to do it is to make more money, because that is the only purpose of a corporation. And so maybe corporations shouldn't be in charge of what is essentially the default public forum, be it Reddit, be it Facebook, be it Instagram, be it Twitter, be it any of those things. Twitter is doing the exact same thing right now. I mean, Twitter has its own whole host of problems, but Twitter started this trend by jacking up their API prices to an egregious amount. Let me be explicitly clear about what it means for API prices to go up. Users are not being charged a new bill, unless they are going to be charged by way of a third-party app having to raise prices because the API access is now egregiously expensive. API access, again, is what allows these apps to work. Reddit is going to be charging $12,000 for 50 million requests. There's not really a great way for me to put that into like layman's terms, but essentially it just means they're going to be charging a ridiculous amount of money for not a ridiculous amount of data. When the creator of the Apollo Reddit app broke down the pricing, it was going to cost about $20 million a year just to have that app exist, which is more money per user than Reddit makes per user. So Reddit would be charging a third party more money per user to give people free access to the platform to generate content that the platform benefits from. What? In terms of pricing, to give an easily understandable picture of just how much these prices have been jacked up. Imagine going to McDonald's and they say that burgers now cost $1,000 each. That is the degree of the markup we're talking about here. Nothing has changed about the burger. It just now costs $1,000 because they can. And in this case, you can't go to another burger shop. They exist, but none of them pass the health code. They have like a dude in the back named like Gnarly, and he flips burgers with his hand that he also, I guess, like picks his butt with. I don't know. It's just, there aren't really comparable other alternatives. Here is my point. Yes, massive platforms, be them privately owned or publicly traded, which is just a fancy way to say privately owned by several other people, they shouldn't have the ability to just cut off access. That is the ability they have. I'm not debating that. I'm not arguing that they can't do this. I'm saying we shouldn't be in this situation. This is not how the web was supposed to work. This is the web on the other side of market analysts and hella capitalists coming in and trying to answer the question of how can we extract as much value out of users of the internet as possible. This is not the pinnacle of the web. This is not how the web was designed to be used. There's discussion about how, Web3 or whatever, not that anybody gives a shit about this anymore, but there was discussion about Web3 and crypto and how it's going to decentralize and let us take back over. That's all also a ruse. That's entirely just capitalists trying to make more money by selling snake oil around the concept of this exact problem being solved. It's their solution to the problem that they made, which is just another problem. I'm going to point to Mastodon as an example of where the internet should have been headed, like privately owned communities that can interface with each other using public open standards. Mastodon is a social network that's somewhere between like Tumblr and Twitter. but it's not owned by a corporation. It is free open source software. And the way it works is instead of having one website like Mastodon.com that everything is there, there's a whole bunch of different versions of Mastodon that can all talk to each other. For example, I run one called astral.camp. So my handle on Mastodon is endeavorance@astral.camp. And I can talk to anyone else on any Mastodon server, but that's mine. That's my server. It's free. It's not owned by a corporation. You don't have to subscribe to terms of service. You don't have to deal with their privacy policy. You find a community that fits your needs and you stay with them. Or you move around. You don't have to pick one and stay there forever. And because of this, me and my community have control over what we see, who we talk to, and how we interact. It's great. A bunch of people will say that like Mastodon has accessibility issues, or it's too confusing to use, or it's never going to catch on. I'm not going to argue that. Like I see those arguments to some degree. I disagree in some places, but yeah, it's not super user friendly. I will totally accept that. But that's not to say that it couldn't be user friendly, or something like Mastodon could potentially take over and be more user friendly. All of this stuff is just suppressed because these massive corporations that have billions and billions of dollars of funding make sure they stay suppressed. They retain their social networks so that you don't really have the option to leave, so that you don't want to hop over, so that you have sunk cost in these platforms. And then they just upcharge pricing. And then chuds will defend them by saying, well, that's their right. And we're all just screwed. Are we just supposed to accept that they can do this and that that's fine and that we just have to eat shit? Is that an outlook we want to have? Or should the internet be a thing that works for people and not just to extract more value out of us, as if we don't already have enough of that in our life day to day? I'm talking too much. I'm gonna drink some more coffee and probably go play Destiny. Thank you for listening. I hope this made any sense at all. I'll see you on Monday. Bye-bye.